Hello, friends. Why do trees hate riddles? Because it's too easy to get stumped. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. I never knew how my grandfather came to possess the Wendigo's eye. But it was one of the few gifts he gave me, so I didn't want to ask too many questions. I only asked one though, and it seemed relevant enough. Is it real? Tommy, don't bother trying to solve every mystery in life. Just enjoy what's given to you. Grandpa's stare, narrowed and angry, told me that there was a price to pay for inquisitiveness. So, I just nodded and palmed the glass eye gratefully. Grandpa then sat back and told me about how the Wendigo is associated with greed, murder, and cannibalism. Nothing good. That rainy night when he told me about the horrible creature like he had known it all his life is the last real memory I have of him. It was the last time Grandpa visited my parents, and when they went to visit him, they told me I couldn't come. When I asked them why, they gave me the same look that Grandpa gave me, angry, but also strangely hurt, as if I offended them for inquiring at all. My parents took many trips to Grandpa's cabin, always alone, always giving me that odd look. Then one time they came home, seeming almost relieved about something. No matter how much I prodded, they wouldn't tell me. They just wanted me to travel up to the cabin with them next weekend. Being a minor still, I couldn't really say no. Not meaningfully. But they didn't know that I could have secrets too. I never told them about the Wendigo's eye. As I sat on the edge of my bed that night, rubbing the smooth glass against my palm, I wondered why all of a sudden they were okay with me visiting Grandpa. Nothing good can come of this, the Wendigo's voice, guttural and mildly insane, said in my mind. I never heard the creature's voice in all the years I had the eye, not in my waking mind anyway, except for the last several weeks. Do not trust your parents, said the Wendigo. If you go up to that cabin, be prepared. I had a nightmare that night. I didn't remember much of it, but I remember having to wipe the dream blood out of my eyes. What a horrible nightmare, I thought. You know how you can't recall a nightmare, but the general feeling? Well, that's exactly what happened. The nightmares continued throughout the week too, and I couldn't recall much, only the horrible feeling right afterward. The nightmare feeling I experienced the night before my trip to the cabin was especially terrifying. I felt sick to my stomach, throwing up half-consciously. When I glanced up, I saw something that made me think I was still dreaming. If you go up to that cabin, be prepared, the Wendigo said in its guttural, horrifying voice. Its eyes were a stark yellow, piercing into me as I wiped vomit from my mouth. I stared into the pitch-black emptiness of the Wendigo's eye socket. Your grandfather gave you a gift. Use it wisely. Wish upon a star, or even better, the thing that lets one see into someone else's soul. I lost consciousness again and woke up a short time later, to the silence of the night. I didn't sleep for the rest of it, instead of contemplating my wish. The Wendigo never said if I only had one, but I thought about my wish as if I did. As we took the long drive up to Grandpa's cabin, I couldn't get the Wendigo's eye off my mind, playing with it inside my hoodie pocket. I thought about the nature of the eye. The Wendigo said it could let you see into someone else's soul. But, for some reason still unknown to me, I didn't care about what they were thinking or feeling. Instead, I used the eye to probe myself, my soul. I realized I was greedy. Money was power, and sometimes you had to do dastardly things to get both. Except what Grandpa said occurred to me again as if he spoke right into my ear. The Wendigo was associated with greed, among other things. Greed is a gateway drug, Grandpa's voice said to me. He had mentioned this adage to me years ago, and at that moment I didn't really put it together, the seeming inconsistency. He seemed to despise greed but carried the eye of a being associated with it. Even gave it to his own grandson. I started to get angry, then a numbness flooded me. I didn't really care. I only cared about sating my own greed and contemplating the nature of the eye and my nature. Had I been greedy all along? Or did the eye make me greedy? It seemed a little irrelevant given my current ambitions, yet I still couldn't help think the same thoughts over and over again. Grandpa's voice became a clicking whisper in my ear, repetitive and irritating, and a split second later womb-like and comforting. The drive continued in awkward silence. We still had several hours to go. I grew increasingly anxious as we left the sprawl of the city and the confines of small sleepy towns. We were headed down a road that narrowed to accommodate the thick lines of trees on either side. I wondered why I was hearing Grandpa, so clear now despite the deafening silence of the last few years. Maybe the Wendigo thought I would listen if he sounded like someone familiar. I didn't really know. It seemed to echo not only ancient wisdom but a more recent form. What happened up in that cabin? I thought. And what has been happening up there the last few years? Something strange must have occurred between my dad, mom, and grandfather. The eye burned lightly in my hand, telling me of the darkness I hadn't been privy to but also politely reminding me that I had a wish to spend. Just the one? I asked it. Just the one, the voice responded. I have some time left, I thought. Don't rush me. I know you're evil. You're trying to shape me. You could throw me out the window right now. But you'll die broke and alone, and you know what's worse? You're wasting your time using me to probe your soul when a wealth of knowledge is just waiting on the other side. It took me until that moment to realize I really missed Grandpa. He was a curmudgeon, dark as hell, spineless as fuck, but he wasn't afraid to explore the dark side of the world, things that were hidden in the darkness that most people cared to ignore. As his gravelly tones faded from my mind, I focused the eye on my parents. My mom seemed fine, filled with pleasant thoughts about me, but my dad radiated such a negative feeling for me that it seriously took my breath away. He seemed to hate me because none of it made any sense. I always thought my dad loved me. But the eye revealed such a visceral hatred that I was left dumbfounded. Can't kill him yet, my dad's thought pierced straight through my heart. And you know what? Because of the wisdom of the eye, I finally knew my wish. I felt like I had matured by a decade during the rest of the ride to the cabin. In the blink of an eye, I guess you could say, I grew up. No gray hairs or anything, but now I possessed a mind seasoned with experience. As I helped Dad collect firewood, I kept getting the sense that something was off with him. Something was off with me too, so I couldn't really find fault in that perception, but it felt like again he was incredibly, immensely angry with me. Not even mine, I could hear his thoughts say, in lower, almost demonic tones. He looked right at me when those thoughts popped into his mind, and it occurred to me then that only the negative thoughts of my dad were visible to me. When I focused the eye on Mom, I couldn't find any thoughts at all. She seemed oblivious to the thoughts inside my dad. I kept asking him why we couldn't go into the cabin right away and see Grandpa, and Dad just grunted like he couldn't think of a good reason. Honestly, I was tired of being yanked around by both of them. They had been very tight-lipped, and even now that we were now supposedly so close to him, what the fuck was going on? My frustration grew, jaw clenched. I rubbed the Wendigo's eye in my hoodie pocket, finally attaining the grit I needed to make my wish. Not even mine, the anger and greed emanating from Dad's thoughts almost overpowered the anger fueling my wish. I wished for the Wendigo to purge the greed in my family to make things whole again. I couldn't get what the creature said out of my mind, about greed being a gateway drug. I figured it was best to confront this head-on. Dad stared angrily at the eye-shaped glow in my pocket, biting his lip as if he just went mad. "You just ruined everything, Tommy. I can't believe I put up with you for so many years." Well, what I learned that day is if you ask the Wendigo, you shall receive. I can't remember if Dad had given me the axe we used to cut down branches, or if it somehow appeared in my hand, but I grasped it anyway. So tightly that my knuckles went numb. Just as Dad lunged, eyes yellow like the Wendigo's, I drove the axe into his head, watching the blood drip down my fingers and forearm. The yellow light faded from Dad's eyes, and I felt as if I could enter the cabin. Something strange had indeed been happening during all those visits. Grandpa said he held the keys to a small fortune, or rather, he had given me the key. I held it firmly in the palm of my hand, watching as Grandpa stared at me with the eyes of the Wendigo. He said that the creature hadn't always been with him, but as the years melted away and Grandpa began collecting a small fortune, it started to take notice. And not just amassing wealth, but how one goes about it. Grandpa killed many people over the years, a bachelor living in isolation, a drug-addicted fool, the demented, and easily tricked. But the Wendigo said that wasn't enough. So he picked the bones of the drug-addicted fool clean. When he approached me in the cabin, my mom watching in an almost resigned horror, he told me that the key to his treasure was the eye in my hand. But a virgin eye, one where no wish had been asked, and none had been granted. I told him I did make a wish, that my family is purged of greed. I swear Grandpa looked exactly like the Wendigo then, yellow eyes generating hate like heat from a furnace. Skeletal snout snapping, drool coming from some mysterious eternal hunger. He told me that only a virgin eye could open the trapdoor in his cabin, a room filled with so much wealth I'd never have to work a day in my life again. I still don't know if the dad I had for all those years was my actual dad or not. Mom says yes, he was. Who else could be my dad? We're still driving far away from the cabin. The words not even mine echo in my head still. I'm angry and feel like I've been cheated. It seems like greed is still alive and well in my family. In me. I can't tell what Mum is thinking, her eyes are on the road. She says she's taking me to meet someone. My real dad? My thoughts are only partially on that, though as momentous a moment as it will be. I'm still thinking about the eye. Since greed is still alive in me, it hasn't been purged from my family. Of course, a wish took away the eye's virginity, but I'm wondering if the Wendigo is lying to me. The wish hasn't been completed. And who knows what will happen when I meet my real dad for the first time. Will I kill him too once the rage and paranoia fill me again? If I can access the room underneath the trapdoor, I'll be a rich man. I'm thinking that's as equally important as family, and I have decisions to make.